I can't survive like anything right now, and all I can get myself to do is just lay in my bed and just try not to go insane. I felt like I'd been insecure my entire life, and I finally was like getting a little bit better, and then suddenly all of that work that I had done in the last couple of years was like gone.
I've only told this to like 2 people, so it's hard to talk about it.
I feel like to understand how I viewed God as a kid, you kind of have to understand me as a kid and my role in my family, because that deeply impacted it. Growing up, I don't know if this is like common in big families, but I feel like there's always at least one, if not multiple kids that sort of take on this role of being like the helper or like the buffer in their family, of just trying to like be the one to make things better if there's like a problem or if there's conflict or if there's tension, like that kid that always like tries to help. And that was definitely me as a kid. I wanted everyone to be happy and I wanted there to be no problems, and that obviously didn't work. I felt very alone, and I felt like I was there for my siblings, my parents, but I didn't really feel like there was anyone who was there for me. And I remember my first experience with God was when I was about 12 years old. And I remember being at church and just sort of like being by myself, like in the back. I don't even remember anyone else being there. Maybe they were, but I wasn't thinking about them. And I just had this awareness of this warm light. It was like this warm ball of light. And I just sort of knew in my soul that this ball of light, whatever it was, that I could trust it and that it was there for me unconditionally when I felt like people were not, and I felt like people abandoned and people forgot about me, or people were not really supporting me. I knew that there was this thing greater than myself that loved me, that understood me, and that was there for me unconditionally, and that I never had to doubt. And so I feel like from that young age, God became like this place of refuge and really like the only constant place that I could go to be safe and to be loved. I can tend to be prone to perfectionism and idealism, and I kind of at a young age wanted to control everything. I was very much like, I wanted to follow the rules, and I wanted to like I remember thinking about like the concept of sinning or like doing something wrong and being like, I never want to do that. Like I always want to do everything right, and I always want to be perfectly nice. I always want to be perfectly loving. And like, I just sort of had this idea in my mind that if I could reach this standard of perfection, then I could control bad things from happening in my life and the lives of other people. I know that's really, really toxic and bad looking back on it, but when I was that young, that was all I knew as like what the truth was, and I didn't have any other concept of God. So I knew that God was safe, but I also was really afraid that like, if I am not deserving and perfect of this love of God, then what if I lose it, or what if it goes away? When I was a teenager, something happened that completely changed my life forever. And I knew when it was happening that I would never be the same person again. It was actually the day that our cover of Party in the USA came out on YouTube. I was completely unexposed to bullying or any type of like hate because I was homeschooled. I feel like I was a little bit more sheltered, even though I did have like a lot of activities that I did. I'd never been bullied in my entire life. And I remember going online, and I was 17 years old and seeing all these comments, and for some reason, a lot of people picked me out in the comments, and they were like, the girl in the middle is so ugly. She's so annoying. She should, like, I remember someone saying like, she needs to go die. Like, it was just like these really hurtful things. And I just remember thinking like, well, these people on the internet they don't even know me. So why would they have any reason to lie? Like, they must just be being completely honest. Like, I must really be annoying. I must really be ugly. I must really be a horrible singer. Like, all of these things that they said. And I just remember like it destroyed me. And I felt like I'd been insecure my entire life, and I finally was like getting a little bit better. And then suddenly all of that work that I had done in the last couple of years was like gone. And I went outside. It was like 5 or 6 in the evening. I hadn't eaten all day because I felt sick to my stomach all day, like seeing those comments and just being haunted by this feeling of like shame. I didn't view myself as better than like a piece of dirt. Like I just felt so down. And I went outside and I just sat on my deck, and I looked out, and we lived close to a lake. So I remember looking out on this lake, and it was like this beautiful bright orange sunset. And I was sitting there and I just felt so bad and so shameful. It was such an uncomfortable feeling that I just wanted to feel some relief. And so I started singing randomly. I had never done this before. And I sang Put Your Records On by Corinne Bailey Rae. And then after that, I suddenly started to feel a little bit better, and I started to sing this song called Deathbed by Relient K, which is this 11-minute song that talks about this man in his entire life, from birth to death, and all these bad things that he goes through. And I knew every single word of this 11-minute song because that's how much I loved Relient K. And I sat there singing it, and when I got to the end of it, I just remember feeling this sensation, like this wave of love was washing over me. And I started thinking about every single person in my family, my mom, my dad, all 10 of my brothers and sisters. And I started crying because I just felt all this love for my family. And I started praying for every single person. I thought about my mom, my dad, my siblings, what they all needed individually, like what things that they were struggling with. And I started praying for God to help all of them individually. And suddenly I heard this interior voice that said, start walking. And I was like, okay. So I just kind of started walking. I sat down on this like concrete pathway outside my house, and there was no one around. And I don't even know how much time passed, but the sun set and the stars came out. And I just remember sitting there, like hugging my knees to my chest and crying and crying and crying and feeling this spirit of love wash over me. And in that moment, I was completely transformed. Just for a split second in time, I saw myself as perfectly lovable, but also perfectly flawed. I could see all my flaws, and I could see how painful they were and how they really were stopping me from like becoming my best self. But I could also see it coexisting with me being lovable. And looking back on that time, I think I was encountering God, and God was showing me my true self. And for a moment, everything in the world just washed away. I thought about gossip, drama, the boy that I had a crush on, my friendships, all of it. I was just like, it doesn't mean what I thought. Like, it's not as important as I thought. And like, in that moment, I just felt perfectly content. I just knew like, I don't need any of these things that I'm always thinking about. Like, I don't need to be even in this world. Like, I just felt this longing to like lift off of the world and go away to heaven. And I felt this sense of ecstasy, like pouring through my body of like perfect peace. And I was just crying my eyes out for, I don't even know how long it lasted, but I just completely just like got out of my body and was just very aware of God. And all of like the hatred and the like judgment and the cruel things that people had said about me, it all just went away. And I was like, I felt like God was telling me like, that is not you. These things are lies about you. And I just could see that I was lovable and that I wasn't perfect and that I had all these flaws, but I was still lovable. And I saw that it would never change. I obviously haven't been perfect. Like, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been a really not good person in a lot of points in my life, but that moment defined my spirituality, like, because I just know that like this world there's a lot of like emptiness, and I know that like meaning only comes from God. But at the same time, sometimes I'm so deeply a part of this world, like so deeply in the experiences and hurts and wounds and feelings of other people. And I feel like after that happened, my senses were heightened and my soul changed. Like, I became like highly sensitive to other people's souls, and I could like feel what they were feeling immediately. Like when I looked in people's eyes, I knew what they were struggling with. I knew what they were feeling. And it was like this heavy, heavy thing that I've carried with me every day since then. But I realized as I got older that God is not about like just giving you these emotional experiences. Like I think a lot of people early in their faith journeys, they are all about the emotion. Like I want to feel. And it's like, God is so mysterious. Like there have been months of my time when I felt like I needed God the most and I felt so far away from him. And I just remember thinking like, if I could have an experience like the one that I had, then this would all go away. Like I would feel better. And I would ask God even for that, but he wouldn't give it to me. And I realized that like, it's not my place to just like ask God for these deep, I don't even know, transcendental, whatever prayer experiences. Like it's not my place, and they're gonna come and they're gonna go, and life is like a series of ups and downs, and you can't just like control everything. And I realized that it's so much more like a marriage. Like in my 20s, I feel like I just became very devoted to God, especially when I moved to Nashville and I met all of these friends who were like really strong Catholics, and they were like living out their faith in this like incredible, like human way. They were so deeply human, and like the way that they loved people and the way that they devoted themselves to their spirituality was just like, it was a complete contrast to what I'd seen in, especially like in LA or like other experiences in my life in the world. I feel like they were living their life in a way that was meaningful and soulful, but also human. They weren't like pretending to be perfect or doing things because of the rules or like judging other people. It wasn't about that. It was just about like communion with God. I think every person in their life will struggle with some kind of darkness, or some like evil will always be there trying to overcome good. It's just something that you can't deny in this world. So for me, that darkness has definitely been this desire to control. And I noticed that even last year in my spirituality, when I just went through this very, very dark, very hard year where I was kind of like pushed to the edge of my sanity, it almost felt like, with like all of the things that were falling apart in my personal life, with a heartbreak, with family struggles, with my own like mental health. Like it was just like a very, very dark and very hard year. And I noticed at the end that I was treating spirituality in a much more obsessive way of like, okay, if I can pray enough rosaries, or if I can like spend enough time with God, like everyone's gonna be safe and everyone will be okay. And bad things, like they won't be as powerful over me and my family. So when bad things would happen to like me or my family, I would almost just get in these obsessive like spirals where I would just be like, if I can pray enough rosaries, or if I can pray enough or spend enough time with God, like I can control these bad things from happening. And I didn't even realize that I was doing that. And when I did realize that, I was so devastated because I had already lost my sense of personal safety with like all the things that had happened last year. And then I was like, this is my last safe place. Like, where am I gonna go? If my spirituality is becoming poisoned, like, what am I even gonna do? And I had like one of the worst bouts of anxiety that I've had in years that lasted for like several days, where I was just like so scared that my safe place had become unsafe. So I just remember when I realized how my spirituality had become like poisoned in a way, I just broke down. I was so upset and I was so scared that my one safe place and my constant was suddenly like this place of obsession and this place of control and like this very dark, like scary place. It was like the darkness permeated everything in my life, including the one last resort that I had. When I finally realized how my spirituality had become like so poisoned, I sat down with God one day and I just was really scared, because I was like, how is it that my relationship with you has become so bad and I didn't even realize it? Even within a day, I felt like this weight was lifted off my shoulder, and God was just saying like, just that the fact that you're aware of this, it's not going to be a problem for you anymore. You don't have to be afraid. And that was like a turning point where I felt like even not just in my spirituality, but in my mental health, like just these obsessive thoughts of fear and like darkness, everything just kind of started melting away. And that's kind of another facet of what God has been. It's like in the most hopeless moments that I've had with darkness and anxiety and problems, God has been the only thing, like the only presence in my life that has given miraculous healing. My relationship with God now, I would describe it more as a marriage or like a family relationship. Like, this is something that I am forever going to be committed to and I'm forever going to be devoted to. And I also am aware that your relationship with God is whatever you put into it. So if you just like say hi to God every once in a while and have a very casual relationship, I don't really feel like you're going to experience the benefits of what it means to like really know God. Whereas if you are spending time with God every single day, you're putting aside time to pray, to talk to God, to read the scriptures, whatever it is, you will experience so much change in your life. And you will realize that like the meaninglessness of this world, like there's an answer. There's an answer to this empty ache that we all feel, that life isn't being as fulfilling as we thought. Even when you achieve the goal, even when you have the relationship that you wanted or the dreams that you want became true. Like, if you don't have a relationship with God, the creator of the universe, there's always going to be this empty ache inside of you. And you're just going to wonder, what is missing in my life? To me, the way I would sum up God is, and when you call upon the power of God, it's like supernatural help. So it's like, when I say supernatural, you might think of like a werewolf or like a witch, but like, I mean, it's beyond the realm of ordinary things. Human instinct, we can be so selfish, and that's like our first instinct. But when you go beyond that into the realm of this supernatural, divine love, your entire life is radically changed from the inside out. And you suddenly start to have like an others first mentality of putting other people first and yourself last. And you might think like, oh, well, that would make me unhappy, but it does the complete opposite. It gives you the strength that you need when you're hopeless. It gives you the place that you need to go, that you're yearning for. I think everyone's yearning for wanting to be perfectly loved, perfectly understood, perfectly cared for. You're never going to find that from any human being. And if you try to find that in people, your entire life, you're going to be disappointed, because no matter how good of a person you're with, everyone's going to let you down. You find the love of your life, they're going to let you down, they're going to hurt you. What you're yearning for is the love of God. Every person has that. It's like this blueprint in their heart. They want perfect love. They're aching for perfection. And that is what I would say, summing up, as an adult, I'm even in an amazing relationship where I feel so loved and so cared for, but it could still never replace the love of God. And without that, I just don't even know who I would be or what my life would be, like what meaning it would have without like the lens of divine love and how that's changed literally every decision that I make every day of my life.
I didn't really know what was going on. We went to church every week. We always got there late, so we had to stand in the back the entire time, and I would just check my mom's watch the whole time and be like, okay, time to go yet? Because there was like donuts after, so I just wanted to eat the donut, get the lemonade, you know? But when I was 11, then we moved from Northern California to Southern California, and we went to a new church, obviously. And the priest there was so good that was really the first time I had been in church and actually like really been impacted by something the priest said and like really listened and like really enjoyed it. After we moved and I started actually like really paying attention in church and like really being affected by the things that were being said, I struggled for a really long time because I just wanted to be perfect and not make mistakes, not do anything wrong. So anytime that I did like sin, like do something wrong, then I just felt like, oh my gosh, like it's all over. I can't pray today or tonight because I sinned today and I just completely rejected God and offended him. So how can I just come crawling back and be like, hey God, after I just ignored everything that he said? So I was just constantly in this like back and forth, like up and down thing where I was like, okay, I'm really good, so I can be close with God, but then if I do something wrong, then I'm bad and I can't be close with him. And even then, when I say close with God, I wasn't really that close. It was more just like I would pray at night and like be like, thank you for my family, thank you for this, thank you for that, like please help me to be a better person, blah blah blah, and then do like the Our Father, the Hail Mary, like memorized prayers that I had. But then if I felt like I was like being bad, then I just wouldn't really pray because I was like, I can't do that because that's just being a hypocrite. So then we moved again when I was 16 and I started going to youth group, and that was when I really started like understanding my faith on more of like a real level. And that was also when my life just started getting a lot harder. And it wasn't even like there were all these like outside things happening that were making my life harder. It was more just internally, like moving across the country and not really knowing how to make friends. Even though I did make friends, I still felt so uncomfortable with myself all the time, and I felt very alone. That was when I kind of like crossed this threshold from like, oh, I'll like pray at night for like 5 minutes to like actually like talking to God for like 30 minutes or for like an hour. Like I remember the first time I actually prayed for like an extended period of time, and I was just like, whoa, I've never experienced this before, where I was just like, hey God, and just like told him about my day and just talked to him more like an actual friend than like this far away like figure. And so my faith was deepening, my understanding of everything was getting a lot more mature, I guess, and like starting to mean a lot more to me. And then I started dating this guy who was really like very religious. He's like, I read the Bible 4 times, cover to cover, like I know all this stuff. But I realized after a while that his view of everything was very skewed. I would always come away from the conversation feeling like a bad person and feeling even more perfectionistic and more legalistic and just bad about myself. Being in a relationship with him just kind of like twisted the wires in my head. That's the only way I could really like describe it, to where I didn't really understand things correctly anymore, and I just felt like a bad person. So I ended that, but I was left with this whole like bad mindset of myself and of my religion and of God and of everything, because I kind of just started to associate him with religion like completely. I didn't really know how to separate them in my mind. I just felt very betrayed and disrespected and manipulated. And so I kind of went into this whole like dark phase of my life where I dyed my hair blue and I was like, I am emo. I mean, not really, but kind of like, I am kind of like angry. Well, I'm very angry, like everyone, especially God. And I was just kind of like, I can't pretend to be like this perfect person anymore. And it was interesting because I knew what the truth was. Like I still knew that God was real and that God was good and that I just had a messed up view of it. But I also knew that I couldn't just change it like that and I couldn't just ignore it anymore. So I just kind of decided to just take a big step back from God and religion. I still went to church every week, but I just wasn't really into it. I didn't really pray. I didn't really do anything like that for like 6 months. I cannot feel like I'm a bad person all the time, and I can't feel like if I'm good, then I can have this relationship, and if I'm bad, then I can't have this relationship. And I knew that that was not what the church was teaching me. I knew that that wasn't God, but that was what my view was, and I couldn't help thinking that. Like, I couldn't wrap my mind around any other way. Through that whole time, like, I still knew that God was there, and I would still, like, talk to him occasionally, but I just couldn't, like, pray or really, like, be close to him. I would kind of apologize once in a while and just be like, hey, I'm sorry that I'm doing this. Like, I know that this isn't real. like, this isn't how things actually are, but I just don't know how to see it any other way. And I would ask, like, can you please, like, change my mind? Because this sucks. I don't even really know what happened, but I just realized who God is, how he sees us. I mean, obviously I can't, like, understand completely, but I had a much better understanding where I just kind of realized God is our Father and we are his children. And I was thinking of myself, like, as a parent, and, like, if I had a little kid and I was like, hey, like, I gave them, like, rules, like, such as God gives us the commandments, right? And I was like, don't run into the street, like, don't touch the stove when it's hot. Like, I told them not to do certain things because I knew that it would hurt them. And, like, if my kids still ran to the street, I wouldn't be like, don't come crawling back to me, kid. Okay, you ran into the street. I told you not to, so it's done. Bye. Like, you didn't listen to me. Like, that's not how I would be. Like, I would understand it's just a kid. And even though I told them not to run into the street, like, kids just do that sometimes. Like, they just don't understand. And I just realized, like, that is how God sees me when I make mistakes. Like, he doesn't just write me off. He doesn't think that I'm a bad person. He just, like, she's a flawed human, like they all are. And I still love her, regardless of what she does. And so I really started to get my faith back, and I started, like, going to daily mass every single day and just having, like, a really good relationship with God for a while. And then when I was 19, then something really bad happened that I'm not gonna say because it's too personal, but it was literally the worst thing that has ever happened to me in my entire life. Like, nothing has ever been so emotionally crushing and overwhelming. It was to the point where I literally spent an entire month just kind of, like, lying in my bed all day. Like, I told my sisters, like, hey guys, like, you can't expect the same level of work that I've been giving you for these past months or years. Like, I'm not at my full potential right now. I'm at, like, my least potential right now, and I really can't do that much. And, like, that's something I never do. Like, I'm always like, oh, just power through, like, just do your best anyway, like, push yourself. But I was just like, I can't survive, like, anything right now, and all I can get myself to do is just lay in my bed and watch TV and just try not to go insane. And that was when I had the most profound experience with God. I wasn't, like, talking to God all day or, like, even praying every day, really, because I was so, like, confused and upset about what had happened. But I just had this stillness, like, deep inside of me where I just felt, I know that God is here and I know that he's with me, and I don't have to do anything. I don't even have to pray. Like, I can completely ignore him, and I know that he's here with me. It was just this deep, steady hope. That whole experience just completely changed my life. Now I'm definitely not where I want to be, because I feel like I have like a steady connection to God where, like, I always wanted him to feel like a friend and a father, and I definitely don't, like, talk to him as much as I would a friend, because I don't want to just be like, oh, only in hard times then God is there for me. It's like he's always there for you, and he always wants to, like, talk to you and you to talk to him. Definitely in a better place than I was. Like, I finally understood how to not feel like a hypocrite when I do something wrong and still have a relationship with God. Definitely want to strengthen my relationship to a deeper and closer one.
So our mom was very religious and we went to church with her every single week, and she had a lot of religious stuff that she brought into our childhood, like videos of saints, like religious like stories in cartoons that we would watch just like for fun, but it happened to be religious, so we would learn from just watching it, or tons of books about saints. We were homeschooled, so a lot of our education would have like a religious element to it. Like maybe we would be reading something just to work on our reading, but it would be a religious book. Or she added religious education to our daily school. So I thought it was very interesting as a child. I wouldn't say I had like this this like friendly, deep, close relationship with Jesus, and I didn't feel like, oh, Jesus is like a friend. I didn't feel like that at all. I just kind of felt like, okay, God is here and I'm going to church and I'm learning about Catholicism. I didn't feel like I was like, I trust you, Jesus, or like, I love you, God. I don't think I ever said that. I had a deep respect for God and for the church, but I didn't have much other than that. And I had, of course, your typical prayer life of, dear God, can I please have a cake or something weird? Like I'm just asking him for stuff, like he's like a vending machine or something. I didn't really know what else to do. So I'm gonna tell you a few things that I view as supernatural that you may be like, what the heck? I can't explain them. I'm just gonna tell you them and just leave it there. I can't explain them, okay? In my prayer life, as a kid, I had a few experiences that I do think were very strange. So I'm just gonna tell you them. I have 2 experiences of faith at a young age. This is my first 2 experiences. I had this St. Christopher medal. I lost this medal, and this is really weird. And I prayed, God, can you please help me find that medal by Friday? I gave him a deadline. I don't know why. And I prayed this like every night. I was like, by Friday, please help me find this. This is really weird, okay? So then, throughout the week, I was like kind of looking out for it, like, hello. Thursday night rolls around, and I was like, guess you're not gonna help me find the medal, God. And I was just like, whatever, because I hadn't really prayed for anything that specific before with a deadline and like seeing what God would do. I'd never done that before. So I go, and I sit down on the mattress and I push the mattress back when I go, and I'm not even joking. The medal like flies out of the side of the mattress. And I was like, okay. And I was a kid. That was my first experience where I was like, I would say my experience of like faith being strengthened by seeing something that I kind of believed before it happened. So I was like, okay. There was a little like growth of faith there. I was like, that's weird. Second weird experience. I don't know if you believe in guardian angels, but I happen to believe in guardian angels. I used to put my siblings to bed when I was in the house. I would have been 8 or 7. I was putting Alex or Lauren to bed up the stairs. So I was carrying one of them, a pretty young baby, and I'm 7 or 8. I'm carrying them up the stairs, and I slipped and I fell back. And I felt a hand push my back up so I wouldn't fall back down the stairs with a baby in my hand. I swear to you, I was just a kid. I don't think I made it up. I felt a hand push me back up. And I instantly was like, oh my gosh, that was a guardian angel. Do with that what you will. But that's another experience where I was like, oh my gosh. And my faith like grew again from that weird experience. Okay, buckle up. Here's a little bit of an emotional situation. So, as a teenager, I started to like slip into the depths of depression. I think I kind of already was depressed as a kid. If I can remember, I think there's moments, maybe you'll understand, relate to me if you've been through that. It's like a weird, dark feeling as a kid and you're like, why do I feel like this? As a teenager, I had a lot of anxiety I was dealing with, and I had a lot I was starting to slip into depression, but I didn't know what depression was. So I was very, very confused. My relationship with God at that point, I think it was the same as a kid. It was like that deep respect. I had some faith. My prayer life was strange, in my opinion. But then a very emotional thing happened to me. I've only told this to like 2 people, so it's hard to talk about it. I was I think I was 16 or 15. I can't remember the exact age. It was 15 or 16. I was extremely depressed. And I would just spend so much time lying on the bathroom floor. So I would go in that room because no one would be there. Apparently my family didn't shower very much. No one would be in there. And I would just go in there and I would just lock the door and just lay there on the ground. And I would just think about dying. And it's really like vulnerable and really dramatic. I never talk about this. I never wanted to talk about this, but it's a part of my testimony, my story, so I have to say in this video. But I got to the point where I was really suicidal. So I was thinking all the time about how I could die, how I could kill myself all the time. It sounds so like brutal to say it out loud, so I don't like saying it out loud. I kind of like to pretend it was like not as bad as it was. But if I'm saying the truth out loud, that's how bad it honestly was, that bad. So I was laying there on the bathroom floor. I'll never forget it. The light was off, the door was closed. I'm laying in the dark in the middle of the day. And I said to myself, nobody would notice if I died, or nobody would care if I died. And in that moment, I swear to you that I heard the voice of God just say 2 words to me. It's the only 2 words I've ever heard the voice of God speak to me my entire life, but I heard this. I heard it. It was not like out loud. I heard it like somewhere in my mind, a voice I've never heard in my head before. It's normally just my voice in my head. I heard the voice of God in my head, that's my understanding, say, I would, just 2 words, I would. And as soon as that happened, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not gonna kill myself. I can't do it. I won't do it. Because I kept telling myself, nobody would care. I felt like I was a burden on people. It was like a selfless thing in my mind. I was like, I'm such a burden on people. It would make their life easier. So no one would care because it would make their life easier. So I heard those 2 words, I would. I was like, oh my gosh, that was God. That was God. He's there for me. He just saved me. I'm not going to die. This is not going to happen. And that was a huge turning point in my faith, because it just went from me feeling like I know God's there to me being like, I know God is there. I know. I had a huge change in my faith from that experience. I was like, it just made things more real to me, even though it wasn't like, and then God talked to me every day and reassured me. That didn't happen. It happened in different ways, but that changed my faith as a teenager, and that changed like the course of my faith at that point. So that changed that. I could use so many like words and phrases that maybe are wrong, or maybe they're not like theologically advanced enough, or maybe they sound dumb. I'm not an expert on this at all. I've been religious since the day I was born, and I've cared about religion since the day I was born. That doesn't mean I'm like this eloquent expert on it, because I'm not. Into adulthood, I decided I need to let God in on my career, because I was keeping God compartmentalized. It was like religion is one thing, career is another thing, friendships, that's another thing, relationships, I think I had God in there on like romantic relationships, but career, I didn't think God had much of a place in our career. And I think you can see that in the beginning of our career versus when we switched over to the You're Worth It era and on. That was because I was like, I need to include God in our career more. I kind of see it, I've heard people talk about this before. It's like God's always like kind of like knocking at your door, and you just need to open it. I guess what I mean is he's not going to go up to you and be like, I'm forcing you to believe me. That's what I mean. He's not going to burst through the door and be like, I am now forcing you and taking away your free will. He's not going to do that. So it's like you have the free will at all times to open that door. That's kind of the way I see it. And I started praying like, God, and I didn't do this before. I was like, God, what should we do next in our career? Like, what should we do? Give me some direction, please. I want to glorify you with our career. I didn't think it was possible. This is in LA really that I started to do this. I started to really invite him in. It didn't make sense to me because I would meet these people and we'd do all this stuff in LA, and we would do all these crazy events and deals and meetings, blah, blah, blah. And I just didn't see how God fit into that. I was like, I can't bring God into this or else it will like affect my decision making, which is a good thing. But at that time, I just didn't really get it. So I finally brought him in. I was like, guide me, direct me, please like lead us. Because I kind of thought that if we brought him in, we wouldn't be going down the direction that I initially wanted to go down, which was true, which was good. But anyway, so he really started to like change my trajectory with work. That really changed in my young adulthood. And I started to develop more of a relationship with God. I learned about the idea of praying. This sounds so obvious to some people. I learned, oh my gosh, I could pray for like wisdom instead of God, please make this deal that we're gonna do work today. I could say, God, can you please give me wisdom so that I can discern if this is the right deal for us? Instead of like, God, make the deal happen. So my prayer life changed into adulthood, and I realized, oh my gosh, I can pray for different things that other than just like, God's the vending machine, give me something. And the idea of sacrifice changed as well in my mind. I understood this as a kid, definitely, because I learned so much about saints, and some of them are martyrs, which means they died for their faith. They said, I will not denounce my faith. You can kill me before I do it. Because they would say, I don't know how much you guys know what I'm talking about, what a martyr is, but basically it's like times when you weren't allowed to be Catholic. So they're like, you're a Catholic, denounce the faith or I will chop your head off. I will murder you, whatever. And they were like, I won't. I'm gonna remain faithful to God. And they got murdered because of it. So as I got older, my view of mass changed. I used to see it as almost like the priest was like a motivational speaker. So I was like, okay, time to motivate me. What you got for me today? Like, say something that makes me feel better about my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. But that was the only way I saw it. I didn't realize it's a sacrifice. How much it means to worship God when you don't really want to necessarily. I mean, you want to, but you don't. Do you know what I mean? You go there and you sacrifice of the time that you could have been doing something else with. And you're like, I'm gonna give this time to God. Instead of like, hey, now I'm here, God, inspire me. That's a new thing that I'm learning about, and it's changing the way I think about everything. It's not all about me, it was about me taking from God before, and I'm changing to me saying, how can I give to God? And then a big revelation I had in my adulthood, which I feel like was kind of late, but whatever. I was like 25 or 26 when this hit me finally. I was almost making myself God. Okay, that sounds really sketchy. It kind of was, but basically I was saying like, I was kind of being like, I can do all things through me who strengthens myself, essentially. So it's like, I can do this. I can take all this on. And it's when I'm really into like success, like motivational type of people and speakers and podcasts and all that. I still love it. Never giving that up. But I was taking that all as in like accountability. Like at the end of the day, like you look yourself in the mirror and you're accountable. Yes, true, absolutely. But I didn't think it meant that I could lean on God. I thought it meant I have to do 100% of everything 100% of the time, and I can't lean on God to help me for anything. First of all, I thought that was possible. I totally thought it was possible. I was like, I can just handle everything on my own. No matter what comes my way, I can handle it. I got to the point where I had so much happening to me with living in Nashville and running the household and moving and buying a house and doing all these different things at once and like career stuff. It was so many large things at once. I just started to like melt down. I was like, I can't do this. But really it was like, I can't do this alone. It was like, I can't do this by myself. I have to lean on God. And when I lean on him, he will like fill me up. He will refresh me and renew me, and I'll be able to do it. But I can't do it if I think that I refresh and renew myself by myself. I couldn't depend on myself alone. As much as I would love to never have to trust anyone or anything else ever, I can't do that. So now I'm at this really exciting place right now. I think I'm the most on fire I've ever been for God and the Catholic faith. And before, I didn't really get into the Catholic faith that much. It's like, okay, my relationship with God, go to church, whatever. But I started to really learn about the Catholic faith, and I was like, I thought it was all these like rules. I can do a whole video on this. I think we should. I thought it was like all these rules you follow, and I was like, boring. But, because I don't really like rules that much, kind of. But then I was like, I started to follow them, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are changing my life. Like, these rules that I thought were gonna make me feel like annoyed and like confined, it felt like I was set free. I know it sounds really weird, and I can't just like make that up. It just happened to me. I started to follow it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so crazy. So I'm at this place where I feel very insecure about my faith, because the more I'm learning, the more I'm realizing like, I know nothing. And there's so much to be learned about it. I like to talk about things that I know what I'm talking about. Even though I've been a Catholic for 28 years, honestly, I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm working on it, but I'm not an expert at all. So I'm learning a lot about it, and the more I learn about it, the more I love it. The more I live it out, the more I love it. And I'm not talking about, there's different things. There's actually living it out and like experiencing it, and there's like the history. It's a lot of sketchy stuff in the history of the Catholic Church. I will tell you that. We all know that. Totally know that. But I'm talking about living it out, is what I'm saying. I am at a place now where I'm super hungry to like learn all this stuff and to really like help people who are in my same position as I get to a more helpable position. Like, I'm in a position where I could actually like pull people. Right now I'm kind of like asking people, hey, help me learn more. So I'm not an expert, not even close. Like, you know, if you ask me about like arranging harmonies, I'm pretty high up there on good at that. I'm very confident I can teach you a lot about that. Catholicism, it's a small percentage of the whole picture that I'm really comfortable with. So as for Catholicism, I'm taking off on a journey right now where I just want to learn so much and experience so much more. And I'm really excited to see what's coming next.